Okay, so this is example 3 of 3 for task 4A, a contrast-focused analysis. In this example, the arguments are such that one argument has a definite conclusion, while conclusion for the argument says, and of course that's a typo right there, so let's take that out, says it is not rational to take a definite position. Of course, one example that I have not given for either contrast or comparison-focused analysis is when you both decide that it's not rational to take a definite position. If you both said that as your first sentence, then that is an identical, then those are identical conclusions of that kind. Word count for the analytical paragraph only in this example is 387. Performance is outstanding, exceptional. The score would be 97.5 to 100, maybe even more. Sometimes I do add bonus or extra credit for particularly well done for a particularly well done analysis. That is one that shows a lot of depth, a lot of nuance, great writing skills, and whatnot. Okay, so of course I've gone through all this in previous videos, so I'm not going to repeat myself here. I'm going to go straight to the example. Remember, it's helpful to read the original arguments to prepare your brain for doing this on your own. This helps you to see, better understand what's going on in the discussion paragraph. All right, so let's take a look at this. Now I'm going to focus on a major contrast I have come to see in our respective arguments. So again, similar to what I said in a video for another example, is that this example was originally used for when I had students first do a comparative paragraph, then a contrast paragraph. So this is their transition from when they say now, from their comparative to the contrast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross that out because you guys only have to do one paragraph with respect to objective analysis. Don't forget, you might still have to do a question paragraph depending on the semester in my curriculum. So make sure you've worked through all of this task folder and see if you're supposed to do a question paragraph. Okay, so I'm going to focus on a major contrast I have come to see in our respective arguments. So I know that they're going to focus on a contrast. They don't give me the gist in this first sentence, which is fine. You don't have to do that. We're going to go ahead and highlight that with green. Please remember that you need to use either neon or faded green. Observe what I emphasize in the following. To be fully certain, I need more information on what doctors are doing to conduct research. Now observe what you emphasize in the following. There have been scenarios where the people who wear masks and take extra precautions spread the virus and contracted it faster than ones who did not wear their mask and take the right precautions. Technically, the student should not have contracted. They should just have and contract it faster, but we're not going to worry about that. That's their writing, not the speaker, not the writer, not the writer of this particular paragraph's writing. It's their peers' writing. Okay, and notice how they, and of course you can compare and contrast all 6 examples in terms of how you introduce quoted material. This one's really crisp, gets straight to the point right here. They decide not to add a gist. They get straight to the quoted evidence. They have one sentence just for their own quote, and then they have one sentence getting straight to the quoted material just for their own quote. I'm not saying that this is the best way. I'm just saying that this is a very good way. All of the examples I've given you are very good ways of doing this part of the paragraph. And so we're doing that in blue. So again, notice how this outstanding, exceptional example, notice how it compares in terms of the discussion, right? In light of completing steps 3A and 3B. Step 3C, again, takes the most work. Now, as I've emphasized in other videos, it's not simply enough to have X number of words or to have a certain ratio of stuff that is not highlighted to stuff that is highlighted. The stuff that is not highlighted, the discussion, step 3C of this objective paragraph, has to be quality stuff that meets the standards of the rubric, which are associated with all of the videos, the coaching, the tips, the warnings, and with the written instructions as well. So in my response, so we know that they're going to now focus on their own response. In my response, after giving a reason why I am tempted, and I really like that. So I don't have to wait and say, here they could have said, after giving a reason why I am tempted, I like how they signal to me right away at the beginning, here's my response. It would be fine if they didn't do that, but this just makes it so much easier to follow or to have a sense of what's coming next. In my response, after giving a reason why I'm tempted to come to the same conclusion as you, I go on to focus on how I would need to first inform myself of the exact protocols, methods used by doctors doing research on mask wearing. Okay, so if you look back up here, he doesn't say anything about protocols, right? But he's offering an interpretation. He's saying basically, I'm wondering about the protocol. So he mentions that here in his discussion. And he says methods, right? Exact protocols and methods. Does he mention methods up here? No, but he's talking about research, right? He's talking about experiments. And so it makes sense and it's plausible for him to interpret and add into our understanding of what's going on in his quoted evidence and his argument as a whole. So he's adding new information, new insights to the quoted evidence from his own claim in blue in the original paragraph to the paragraph as a whole. Notice how I then go on to link this to a desire for certainty. So he's pulling out words that name fundamental and powerful concepts in his thinking that relate to what he said before, which connects directly to his quoted material, which I then connect to informing myself of how much time is required to ensure only accurate information is obtained from any related research, experiments, etc. Notice how he is not merely repeating what he's already said. He's offering insight. He's adding to the reader's understanding of what's going on in his reasoning. As such, you can see, so as such, remember, that's a nice transition. It lets us know that some kind of conclusion based on an interpretation using college level reading and analytical skills is supposedly following from what he said thus far. Right in here, he's been focused just on interpreting his own reasoning based on the quoted material, connecting it to other things he says in the argument. Then he draws a conclusion based on that. As such, you can see how a lack of information connects to my lack of certainty about the very methods and nature of scientific research, which leaves me unable to take a definite position on mask wearing once and for all. You, on the other hand, great transition, especially for a contrast-focused paragraph. In other words, I know exactly I know what's going to happen now. He says, you, on the other hand, I know he's going to stop talking about his own response, or she is, and they're going to start talking about the peer response. Very easy to make the switch in my mind. This is adding coherence and fluidity. You, on the other hand, great, appear to assume, using Hedges, I've already talked about Hedges in other videos, all the information needed to claim what you do about any attempts by any kind of researcher to prove a given claim about mask wearing is true. Again, notice how the writer is not merely repeating what the peer says, they're offering an interpretation. You never once say you need more information to attain any kind of certainty about mask wearing or science. Rather, after claiming the results of research are almost always inconclusive, you give a specific example of how events in real life, and this should be actually demonstrate because they say events and that's plural, that even research could be shown as having arrived at inaccurate claims about wearing masks. Overall, so here, this is a nice transition. It's implied that this is a conclusion indicating an interpretation, again, that they have read, that they have reached using their college level reading and analytical skills. Overall, you appear to assume that you do have enough information to draw a definite conclusion. Notice how that parallels with what he says or she says over here. As such, you can see how a lack of information connects to my lack of certainty about the methods of science, which leaves me unable to take a definite position once and for all. And then, after offering more evidence and reasoning and interpretation for what his peer does or does not focus on, or her peer does or does not focus on, Anthony, then you see that he offers this conclusion based on his analysis and interpretation of the peer's response, which really brings to light the contrast when you compare this sentence right here to this sentence right here. Oh, this is really good reasoning. This is really good argument about a contrast in arguments. Hence, so we have those as such and the overall, those are minor conclusions en route to establishing the implied minor conclusion that this really is evidence supporting the main conclusion in green. Hence, my argument, and they're talking about the argument that they are analyzing, the one that they did during Unit 1, not the present one, that is the argument about the arguments. Hence, my argument, the original response, is focused on how I think I lack sufficient information to take a definite position on the topic of mask wearing. Whereas your argument, so again, a great transitional phrase that shows that they are going to indicate a contrast with respect to what their peer thinks or their approach or how they handle the topic, assumes you do have sufficient information, making use of an example and definitions to support the definition cited in your conclusion. So here they do reference the conclusion a bit in here, but they speak very little of the conclusion. They only mention the conclusion after giving a lot of interpretation and reasoning about their approaches, the reasoning, the logic that led to their conclusion. So this is still aligned with what I said in one of the videos that went with the document you downloaded.